Well, with that long-awaited flick of the pen, President Biden gave tens of millions of Americans a new lease on life by canceling significant amounts of student debt. To President Biden, I say thank you. Thank you for listening to our calls. Thank you for taking action. The President's decision will make it easier for millions of Americans to finally pursue their own American dream.
Several more states have established new relief programs that provide residents with an extra stimulus check. A one-time $500 check is on the way for so many people. Now, if you owe your money in Virginia's tax return last year, you're in luck as November fast approaches, and that's because the Virginia General Assembly has passed a law giving taxpayers like you a 2022 tax stimulus rebate of up to $250 for individual filers and up to $500 for joint filers. The one-time 2020 tax stimulus check in Virginia is part of a recent trend. Over the 2022 state stimulus checks are being issued in California, New York, Colorado, and Florida. Just to name a few states, many of which are sent and are currently sending stimulus payments to their residents. And I know many of you are wondering why so many states issue stimulus checks. A lot of states are sitting under budget surpluses in part due to the influx of crisis relief funds from the federal government. But it's important to know that these state tax rebate checks and state stimulus payments are different from the 3 rounds of stimulus payments they may have received from the government. The federal stimulus program has ended, but if you didn't receive your third stimulus check of $1,400, there's still time for you to file taxes and get those funds into your bank. So not every taxpayer, however, in certain states can get the 2022 tax rebate. If you had a tax liability on some returns, you'll get up to about $250 for a tax rebate if you're single, and up to $500 tax rebates if you're married and filing jointly. The last year of inflation has disproportionately hurt so many low-income families, and now those with the least flexibility in their monthly budgets absorb higher prices. Now, those same families could be hurt by economic policymakers' plan to tackle inflation, though interest rate hikes in potentially longer-lasting ways. Last month, leaders of the Federal Reserve predicted that, given their plans to continue rising rates, unemployment will rise from 3.7% to 4.4% by the end of the year, and this means an additional 1 million people would lose their jobs over the 12-month period. Now, Jerome Powell has also said that, "I wish there was a painless way to do this." Other financial analysts have even projected even higher unemployment as a result. Bank of America predicted unemployment will reach 5.6% by the end of this year, translating to more than 3 million people out of jobs. Now, on top of all this, if rate hikes do push millions of people more out of work, those who would likely bear the biggest brunt of that job loss and take the longest to recover are the same group suffering most from inflation. So, with higher unemployment and recessions, it doesn't affect just those who lose their jobs. This assumption that the federal government will be willing or even able to pay provider target assistance is uncertain. And now the question is whether the Federal Reserve will be able to hit the brakes and to decide whether they've done enough, on whether or not it's too late and that the economy will be hurling downhill toward a recession that the Fed cannot even control. So, the Fed has raised interest rates to slow down the consumption across the economy as the cost of borrowing rises and continues to rise dramatically.
Her son received his stimulus check, an actual paper check, which she was trying to help him find where to cash without being charged a fee.
I just feel like I'm being cheated, robbed.
PLS check cashing takes 1% plus $1, meaning only $13 in fees on a $1,200 stimulus check. Other check cashing services said they would charge the government.
We finally have some breaking news, everybody. Important information has been released by the IRS, and lawmakers are actually working on making some big changes that will affect inflation and the current cost of living adjustment, meaning that many of you guys could expect to receive a stimulus check in a couple of days. So here are some new details on what the federal government is doing right now. Right now, Americans are hoping for wage gains to offset the hottest inflation in 40 years, but there are a number of factors that could impact your take-home pay in 2023. And because inflation is rising so sharp, the IRS and other agencies are changing many rules to account for the increase in prices. For instance, the tax agency said this week that it's boosting its 2023 tax brackets by 7% because of inflation. This is a move designed to avoid bracket creep, which is when people get pushed into higher tax rates because of cost of living salary adjustments, although their standard of living hasn't even changed. And the IRS is also increasing the standard deduction by the same percentage, which will benefit most taxpayers who use this tax break. Inflation adjustments to tax brackets mean it will be harder for taxpayers to hit those higher brackets, and therefore we'll have more income taxed at lower rates next year. So what does this mean for you? Well, the interplay is that these changes is complex, but the upshot is that many low and middle income taxpayers may be able to trim their taxes as a result. The outlook is more complicated for higher income workers because of an inflation adjusted boost in the cap for Social Security taxes. According to a recent survey for 2023, employers plan to roughly offer their workers an annual raise of 4%. That's roughly in line with the median pay bump that employees got in 2022. The problem is that inflation this year has been running at about twice the rate, with prices rising 8% in September from a year ago. Economists at the Federal Reserve also expect inflation to subside later this year and into next year as well, although the central bank has been criticized for its last call that the sharp rise in prices was transitory. Now, if the Fed is correction in predicting that inflation will decline next year, it will restore some purchasing power for consumers next year. So far, though, inflation has remained very high. We all know that. And the IRS is boosting its taxable income thresholds for its 7 tax brackets, which range from 37 to even 10%. The higher limits could... A spokesperson for the Department of Education told CNN the Department of Education will begin beta testing the student debt relief website. During the beta testing website period, borrowers will not be able to submit applications, or they will be able to submit applications for the Biden-Harris's administration student debt relief program. CNN has reported that anyone who applies for the debt relief in the beta period will receive a confirmation email, but the application will not be processed until the site formally launches. Once processing begins, most qualifying borrowers are expected to receive debt relief within weeks. The spokesperson also continued that these borrowers will also not need to reapply if they resubmit their application during the beta test, but no applications will be processed until the site officially launches later this month. Borrowers must have also federally held student loans to qualify. The Education Department will work to determine applicants' eligibility, and once approved, it will notify borrowers that their applications were sent to loan servicers to process debt relief. According to CNBC News, those loan services also ultimately will inform borrowers that relief has been applied, in addition to providing any details about outstanding loan balances and monthly payments, everybody. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of stimulus checks, whole bunch of information to know. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Now, here's some important news. It's finally happening. Financial relief is actually underway for millions of Americans. Many people are expecting to receive thousands of dollars in extra stimulus cash, and you can get yours right now. Now, a fresh round of inflation data last week has been released, and it showed high prices, raising more questions about whether the Fed interest rate hikes are missing what many economists contend are the real inflationary culprits: corporate pricing, energy costs, and supply chain disruptions. The news is further stirring fears of unnecessary economic pain that should the Fed push America into recession. One economist told reporters raising interest rates is not working, and the Fed's overly aggressive actions are shoving our economy